What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
Braking system. The braking system on the Peugeot 3008 is nothing special. In terms of components, it is fully compatible with the brakes of other Peugeots, starting with the Peugeot 307. On cars with atmospheric motors, front discs are 283 mm at supercharged petrol, 2-litre turbo diesel and the most powerful. Variants of 1.6-litre diesel, 302 mm. At the rear there are usual for the French car industry combined with the hub 267 mm discs. Parking brake everywhere is electric, typical French system, with a motor reducer pulling the cables. Resource of discs and pads without surprises. They serve long or even very long. On original components, front discs can pass more than 150,000 kilometers. However, in life, their resource suffers from operating errors or neglected maintenance. The front calipers are the simplest, with a floating bracket. They require minimal maintenance and after 7 to 10 years of operation will ask for a light overhaul with replacement of piston seals. But pins of calipers are often changed earlier. In rear calipers there are built-in screw mechanisms of parking brake, which, if you do not use the handbrake, regularly sour. Older cars often have corrosion of the shaft gland and cables are more and more often caught stretched. However, all these are relatively frequent, but minor problems. But to check the serviceability of the handbrake drive gearbox is a must. A new one is very expensive. The price starts from 120,000 rubles, although the cost of Boschny starts from 5,000 rubles. It goes out of order as with damage to the glands, warping and cracks in the plastic housing or souring of the stem, and simply due to wear and aging of lubricant, jamming cables in the tubes and similar trifles. If the gear motor takes too long to apply, the brake or crunch is heard during its operation, it should be checked more thoroughly. And at the same time it is necessary to see if there is an unlocking key in the trunk. There is a hole for it under the driver's seat. Detail original price of non-original 2 brake system. Front brake pads 5677 TRW 2676 Fenix 1 252 rear brake pads 3033 Peugeot 2755 Fenix 964 brake disc front 283 by 26 mm 3 223 Peugeot 2910 Fenix 2 186 brake disc rear 267 by 12 mm 7 170 TRW 3 614 Bosch 3 630 Suspension of front-wheel drive versions is strong and almost unbreakable. All elements are familiar. Strong struts and screw-in ball bearings here are from Peugeot 307 Citroën C4. The front levers are also from them. Attention requires mainly the rear support of the lever, which rarely serves more than 60,000 mileage. When replacing the ball bearings, be careful, they must be fixed in a tightened position, and the procedure for removal according to the manual is unnecessarily complicated. Chisel and hammer often solve the problem faster than the standard method with the removal of the rack and unscrewing in a vise. The resource of rack support and ball bearing support passes far beyond 100,000 kilometers, but stabilizer struts are a consumable. But as a whole the design is still successful and inexpensive. At the rear of front-wheel drive 3008s there is a simple beam, and there is nothing to break there. Supports of a beam serve under 200,000 and from trifles often require replacement only bushings of shock absorbers. And that is only on cars that are often driven with loading on bad roads. Cars with the DRC, dynamic rolling control system, have difficulties with the price and life of shock absorbers. By mileage of 120 to 150,000 they start to mist up and leak. Sometimes they were changed under warranty at mileage up to 100,000, but now there is no chance of such luck. At the price of one shock absorber in 50,000 rubles, the result is predictable. They are replaced with ordinary ones and the system is disconnected. Busy, but there was a sense in it. A rather high minivan with DRC does not lurch even on its soft suspension. The rear suspension of the hybrid version is more complicated. There is a very developed subframe, which serves as a basis for electromechanical transmission and a block of batteries. And the suspension of such cars is multi-lever. However, there are no chances to find such a car in Russia, as well as there is no reliable information about the resource of the design. In general, the suspension is similar to the rear suspension of Citroën C5 of the second generation, and there it is quite reliable. And its only weak point is the camber arm. Detail original price of non-original 2 suspension L-shaped lever 49 176 TRW7 680 Lemford 6072 front. Wishbone front SB 779 TRW 700 Lemford 801 ball bearing 4025 Moog 3031 Lemford 4029 diagonal large rear suspension arm 9 483. Not available rear suspension camber rod 2 646 Sidem 3 484 Febby 3 894 strut support 2 324 Lemford 2058 BSG 773 front hub bearing 6034 BTA 5 278 senior 2 812 steering. There is nothing unusual in steering. As in other cars on the PF2 platform, there is an ECU with a very reliable rack and quite reliable pump. Pumps of this generation have a minimum of problems with leakage of oil seals and breakdowns of control electronics. The wiring harness is better laid than on earlier models and it is very rarely frayed, mostly after unsuccessful body repairs. Leaks in the system are also very rare. The pump works accurately and does not overload the rail if the control system is in good working order. The main thing is not to forget to change the oil at least once every 50,000. Boschny pump and rack are inexpensive, but if you suddenly want to buy them new, then prepare 120,000 rubles for each detail. In the steering column can be annoying small backlashes and knocks, but the reasons for their appearance can be different. And in addition to the obvious check of the gimbal, it is worth checking the tightening of the column mounting bolts. The cover of the hole in the body sometimes flies off its place, and if the noise level in the car increases, be sure to look into the driver's feet with a flashlight. Transmission. Common problems. The non-hybrid versions do not have any serious flaws in the transmission design. The splines do not rust and the bearings are quite reliable. Even a slightly weak bearing of the intermediate drive support will almost certainly pass its 150,000 mileage. As usual, there are difficulties with the replacement of the individual ball joints. Officially they are not on sale at all, there are only their covers. External hinges are available, but there is a problem with internal ones and they have to be selected from old models. Or if the tripod cup is not broken, then just restore it. Manual boxes. The manual boxes in the Peugeot 3008 can be different. MKP series ML6C, it is also BVM6, was put with diesel motors. The box BE4R was put in a pair with gasoline motors, including supercharged. It is weaker and holds the moment only up to 270 Nm. The main problem faced by the owners of 3008 is not the automatic transmission itself, but the work of the cable drive of shifting. In our climate it can freeze and jam, so cables should be regularly checked and grease should be poured under their jackets. BE4 boxes have difficulties with wear and tear of the shift mechanism itself in the transmission. This occurs mainly at mileage over 200,000, so it is on 3008. Due to the relative youth of these cars, such problems are very rare. And in any case, all mechanical boxes are inexpensive, about 20 to 30,000 rubles, and they are easy to buy second-hand. Automatic transmissions. There were also several variants of automatic transmissions for the 3008. The classic automatic is AM6C, hydro-mechanical 6-speed ASIN, which is better known to everyone as TF80SC and which is found on the Volvo and on Land Rover and Saab, Opel, Ford and Mazda. On Peugeot 3008 it was used with 1.6 THP and 2-litre diesel engines until 2013. It is quite reliable automatic transmission, which in fact has only 3 weak points. The main peculiarity of the gearbox is that its hydraulic block does not tolerate work on dirty oil. Channels and solenoids wear out easily. It is only necessary to delay with oil change, polluting it by active starts with slippage of locking frictions in GDT, and after 10,000 kilometers of run the box will never become the same. And its complete restoration is expensive. One more problem turned out to be exclusively constructive, almost until the restyling. There are boxes with old design of sealing rings of the main shaft and pressure leakage to the whole group of frictions. And the last trouble is overheating due to initially weak cooling system and clogging heat exchanger. On diesel engines with a remote thermostat the situation is not so terrible, but with the hot temper of gasoline engines the box has a very hard time. This exacerbates the problems with the first two factors and adds to the chances of rubber pistons breaking and O-rings shrinking. With regular oil changes, the automatic transmissions in this series are quite reliable. Even if to change oil once in 60,000, but not to burn out, it will pass its 200 with more than 1,000 mileage almost certainly. At the same time, a car with such a box is quite comfortable and economical. MC Series box with code 20GE53 is the little sister of the 6-speed automatic transmission. It is also ASIN, but TF70SC TF82SC is a lighter and improved version of the previous TF80SC with an electric pump and reduced dimensions. And basically the same problems. Except that shaft sealing rings are always new. It was installed after restyling in pair with motors 1, 2, 1, 6 THP and with diesels. And on the hybrid version of Peugeot 3008 it was installed even since 2011. A characteristic feature of such a box is the presence of a start-stop system in the car. A small difference in the maximum transmitted torque is not very relevant for motors without tuning, and in general, this version of the box is more reliable and stable than the old one. With a 1.6-litre diesel engine before restyling there is also a 6-speed robotized transmission EGS6. It is a box with one clutch and fast-acting electro-hydraulic mechanism of shifts of Magneti-Marelli development. This is quite an advanced version of the robot, but even it cannot compete in usability with pre-selective boxes and classic automatic transmissions. Details about service problems can be read in the material about Citroën C4 Picasso where this transmission is much more common. All-wheel drive is exclusively electric and is rare. There is little objective data about reliability of such system, but we can say that there are no special difficulties with battery life and failures of electronics. The mechanical part is also quite successful. Motors. Common problems here we can note weak cooling systems and, what is especially unpleasant, radiators. For gasoline motors, this has become a real problem. In addition, there are regular problems with failure of thermal fuses and radiator fan resistors, and in winter the fan can be jammed by snow. So, overheating in frost is a specialty of Peugeot. Antifreeze level sensors in the tank fail en masse, soldering helps them. There are also failures of fuel pump relay on cars with mileage under 200,000. An unpleasant nuance is that the relay is soldered into the BSM block, so the elimination of this trouble is either expensive or requires, frankly, kolhozny methods of repair. Well, and engine supports also turned out to be quite weak, and they already have to be replaced at mileage over 100,000 kilometers. Gasoline engines. The gasoline engines here are of two families, 1.6-litre atmospheric before restyling and 1.6-litre supercharged Series Prince and 1.2-litre Series PureTech. Let's start with the Prince. It's good that only quite late variants of these motors were put on the Peugeot 3008. And it's bad that even with refined engines, there are enough troubles. It is a shame that the 6-speed automatic transmission was put only in pair with a supercharged motor, and there are a lot of such cars in the population. I have already written a whole article about these motors, and everything said there about modernized EP6C is relevant for the Princes. On the 3008, the problems are familiar: low life of timing and pump, oil appetite, constant threat of falling out of valve seats. And leaks and more leaks. Both oil and antifreeze flow through all seals and squeezed plugs. This motor requires careful and frequent maintenance, as well as very competent service. But the owner usually learns about it after it is explained to him that the motor is easier to replace than to repair. Surprisingly, many owners are still convinced that an atmospheric engine with chain timing is a model of reliability and that BMW engineering is infallible. I hope you will not fall into this trap, and when buying check all weak points of the motor, and in the process of operation you will. Remember that you should fill the oil with quality and change it often. And that it is necessary to reduce the temperature by reflashing or modification of thermostat and fan on-off unit. Motors 1, 2 PureTech, which appeared after restyling, are very rare. Their design is very unusual and, strangely enough, quite reliable. In fact, there is only one serious problem: the belt is in an oil bath, and by the mileage over 100,000 it begins to deteriorate, clogging the oil receiver with its remains. The valves usually do not bend, but the motor cannot live without oil pressure. Diesel engines. To find a car with a 2-liter diesel engine of DW10 CTED4 series is not easier than a hybrid one. The motor is not bad, but if you want, you can find weaknesses and at him. First of all, it is worth noting the presence of an intershaft chain in the timing drive and its limited resource. Many people change only the belt, and after 150,000 kilometers, the chain slips and the motor breaks the cylinder head. The second big trouble is that the particulate filter and EGR don't work very well. On engines with mileage over 150,000, leaks, burnout errors and clogged intake are quite regular. The fuel system is also quite capricious, which adds problems to the piggy bank, but there are no other serious mechanical problems. From not serious, I will note only limited resource of the crankshaft damper pulley. These motors are loved for high power, good boost and overall life. In neighboring countries this engine is quite common, and there are many services specializing exclusively in this series of motors. And in Russia, the bulk of diesels are 1.6-liter DV6C or DV6 TED4 engines. The first engine is 8-valve, and it was installed after the restyling, but the second one is 16-valve, and it was installed before it. It is not a mistake. The drive of the second camshaft on 16-valve motors before restyling was carried out by a chain, and it was a constant headache of owners. At mileage already over 150,000 it wore out and began not only to make noise, but also to threaten to slip and even break. The motor was considerably simplified, but it did not affect the power. Diesels after restyling became not only more reliable, but also a little more powerful. In addition, the early 16-valve diesels regularly had problems with the pneumodoseder, a system necessary for the operation of the particulate filter and EGR. After the restyling, the problem was almost completely eliminated, but you can read more about the shortcomings of this line of motors in the review. Citroën C4 Picasso detail. Original price of non-original 2 engine radiator 11,761 Valeo 21,258 Nissans 9,158 timing chain 1.65098 INA 4 152 Swag 5 103 timing chain tensioner 2 598 VPM 1 783 Top Ran 4 538 timing kit 1.66 123 BGA 9 181 Swag 13 746 Pompa 1.63 716 Airtex 2 465 Hapu 7 305 To take or not to take. Alas and it is better not to count on absolutely trouble-free operation of Peugeot 3008. Yes, this car has a good body, a good saloon, a decent running gear, but the 3008 is not very lucky with motors and their combinations with boxes. Do you want a good classical automatic? Get in addition not the most successful supercharged gasoline prince. It is possible, of course, to resist and to search for a diesel car with automatic transmission as in TF70SC, TF8SC, but the majority of Peugeot 3008 with torque converter box will still be with turbocharged EP6C. True, if you do not strive to find a two-pedal car, the freedom will be a little more, manual boxes are good, and the choice will be reduced to finding the desired motor. The least attractive combination is the cars before restyling with 1.6-liter diesel and EGS6 robot. Let the motor and is not worse than the gasoline prince, but to repair the box you will have to look for specialists. And of course, do not look at cars with gasoline 1.6-liter motors which have long been driven by those who do not pay attention to trifles like oil level and antifreeze. After such, riders will have to invest too much money in the car, which will completely kill all the good impressions of both the body and the interior. In conclusion, the Peugeot 3008 offers a robust suspension system that promises longevity, making it a reliable choice for those seeking comfort and stability on the road. However, it's essential to pay attention to the engines, as regular maintenance is crucial to ensure their optimal performance over time. By balancing care for the engine with the inherent durability of the suspension, owners can enjoy a satisfying driving experience for years to come. Thank you for watching, and we hope this insight helps you make an informed decision about the Peugeot 3008.